Okay, so let's have a look at what we can do when we have created our regression line, but for some reason we want to add some extra points uh, into that regression line. Okay, so we have created a regression line by these points that you can see here in green. Okay, and we have used our tool in rel regression line from points. Okay, but in this case we just want to add these 5 points on white, okay, to be considered by this regression line. All right, so one of the tools that we have now available is uh, you can find it in here in regression tools, add points to regression line. Okay, so I'm gonna select that, and the first thing that we can see in the dialog is that we can select some status. Okay, so we can use a point to be considered in the regression line. We have the option to ignore in case we want to ignore a point that have been used in the regression line. We can fix a point. This is just going to force the geometry that you're gonna build into that point. So it's gonna fix it, and we're gonna see one example there. And we can use an information point. So this is just going to use the value, but it's not going to be considered into the geometry. Okay, so let's let's have a look at some examples. So I'm gonna select all of them, and you can use any selection set tool to use to select the points. I'm gonna reset, and I'm going to select my regression line. Okay, I'm gonna accept, and now we can see that the points have been considered in my regression line. Okay, well let's make a couple of edits. So I want this point to be a fixed point. So one thing that we can do is just using the element selection. I'm going to select the point. Okay, so this is my point selection, and I'm gonna scroll down to the regression point properties, and I'm going to change it to fix. So I want this point to be a fixed point. Okay, the second edit is that I'm going to do is I'm going to select that point, and I'm gonna assign it as an information point. So I'm gonna do the same, my regression point properties, and I'm going to change the status to information point. Okay, you can see that right now it's an information point, but it's not being considered in the line. Okay, so now let's go ahead and try to create a geometry out of this regression. Okay, and let's focus on this area. And for that, I'm going to use horizontal regression, and I'm going to select single horizontal regression. Okay, so the first thing is I'm going to do is just I'm going to select my curve. Okay, I'm gonna set some settings here. Um, yeah, I think that's okay. I'm gonna select my feature definition, and I'm going to select my first point. So I'm gonna use this area, and notice that I can select area. So basically the points that I want to see, and straight away I can see the slew values. Okay, and notice that I need to select the area in order for the information point to be considered. Okay, so I want the information point to be considered, and I'm going to accept. Okay, so I have my geometry here, and what is important to see is that we have used a fixed point. If you remember, was this one. So I can see that the geometry um, is fixed to that point, so it's overlapping to that point. And every time I select my geometry, I can see my slew values dynamically. Okay, and you can see some in red and all others in orange, and all of that is coming from the settings. So if I go to the backstage and I'm going to select settings, I'm going to the users settings and preferences. Okay, if I go to my view option civil and I'm going to scroll down to my regression slew display settings. Okay, so this is the area where you can define which colors you want the acceptable slew, unacceptable slew. You can set the maximum and some other symbols, how you want to display the fixed points and information symbol and other preferences. Okay,